Hello again, John Denver fans. Corinne Smith here, continuing our study of John's original vinyl albums as they came out in chronological order. In parts 1 and 2 of this series, we already looked at 3 Mitchell Trio albums and 6 of John's solo albums. So that means we're up to the year 1973 and to John's 7th album, Farewell Andromeda. It's one of my favorites. Before we consider the songs, though, let's first look at the cover art because it continues the emphasis with John's connections with nature, with all kinds of animals surrounding his face, both on the front and on the back. All the animals mostly from the American West. We've even got some bighorn sheep on top of his head on the back, unless there's a mountain hiding behind him that we can't see. Yeah. So we have nature again, as we did with the album covers of Airy and Rocky Mountain High, continuing to firm up that connection with the American West and with nature. And then, when we open up the album, oh my goodness, it's the whole universe. Why? Because by this time, John and Annie Denver were followers of Werner Erhard and his program EST, E-S-T, Erhard Seminars Training. Now remember, 1960s, 1970s was time for a lot of young people to explore personal introspection, and there were lots of different kinds of self-help programs growing in popularity. Some people began to explore other religions. Think of the Beatles visiting the Maharishi in India. So there were all kinds of different platforms that you could join, and Transcendental Meditation was one, EST was another, and everyone was figuring out where they fit into the realm of the whole universe. So we have 11 songs on this album. 5 of them were written by John. The title song, Farewell Andromeda, is subtitled Welcome to My Morning, and John dedicated it to Werner Erhard and to EST. And he said, as he explained this, Farewell Andromeda is just a wonderful song of celebration. I had just finished the EST training, and the song is dedicated to EST and to Werner Erhard. It has to do with taking responsibility for your life. You make the day the way it is, especially in your mind. I love the song in concert and as an introduction to an album. What I am doing is bringing you into my life and bringing you into my views, my experiences, and I welcome you to that. I want you to know that I'm responsible right here and now for whatever it is I might be doing. Welcome to my morning. Now, if you remember, back on the 1975 live album, An Evening with John Denver, the concert starts with John singing one verse of The Music Is You, and then an announcer comes on and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, John Denver." And wild applause ensues, and John says, "Good evening!" And then he laughs, and then he launches into Farewell Andromeda, using it to set the stage, literally, for the rest of the performance, just like he said he would do. Oddly enough, though, here on the album, it's the last song on the second side. Also, oddly enough, again, keeping with things, the list of the songs here is not the way they appear on the album or on the liner notes. Okay. By the way, as I've mentioned before, I'm getting some of John's stories from the book John Denver: The Complete Lyrics, put together by Milt Oken and published in 2002. If you have a copy, don't let it out of your sight because it's out of print and difficult to find anymore. And it is a magnificent reference source. Song lyrics, but also stories that John tells about the songs. Okay, back to Farewell Andromeda, please. The other songs by John Denver on here are Rocky Mountain Suite, Cold Nights in Canada, which is in 3/4 time, and it includes an environmental message, how the life in the mountains is living in danger from too many people, too many machines. Still true today, John. Still true today, even more so now. Also includes the song Zachary and Jennifer, in which John reveals the names of the children that he and Annie hoped to adopt someday, and they eventually would adopt a son named Zachary and a daughter named Anna Kate. My favorite song on this album, and my second favorite song of John's overall, is I'd Rather Be a Cowboy, Ladies' Chains, which is the opener on this album. I mean, yes, I would still rather live on the side of a mountain than wander through canyons of concrete and steel. Thank you again, John, for that image. I haven't quite nailed down that little guitar intro at the beginning of the song, though. I really have to work on that. Got to practice it more. Anyway, John's Whiskey Basin Blues sounds very country, or at the very least, very Western. He includes yodeling on it. The other cuts on the album also lean toward the country sound. Let me get my list here. Angels from Montgomery, of course, is a John Prine song. If you listen to classic hit stations today, you may more often find the version recorded by Bonnie Raitt, okay, which is a good one. And the lyrics of Angels from Montgomery actually make it more conducive to a female voice singing the song, because it starts with "I am an old woman named after my mother." But it really, in the end, it doesn't really matter. John Prine wrote the song. John never sings it on here. No? Okay. He also sings Sweet Misery, written by Hoyt Axton, Berkeley Woman, written by Brian Bowers, and River of Love, written by John's good friend John Summers, which includes some good pedal steel guitar. We also find 2 songs by Bill Danoff on here, We Don't Live Here No More, and also Please Daddy Don't Get Drunk This Christmas, which is a mournful country-like tune that Bill wrote along with Taffy Nivert. I have worn out at least 2 or 3 of these CDs in my car. This one's taped together. And a bunch of them are scratched. There are a few songs on here that I skip over when I'm driving. I'm not going to tell you which ones they are, but if you ever pass me on the highway, you may very well see me belting out a bunch of the songs on Farewell Andromeda. Okay, now we move on to November of 1973 and to the release of John Denver's Greatest Hits. Yay! There are 11 songs on here, and we fans were very happy cats to see this one. Here we had the best songs so far, all on one album. Are you kidding me? Although technically, how many top 40 hits had John had up until this time? Do you know? Can you guess? Okay, on the count of 3. Hold up the same number of fingers as top 40 hits that you think John Denver had by November of 1973. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go. 2. 2. Country Roads, Take Me Home Country Roads in June of 1969, and Rocky Mountain High in January of 1973. 2 by this time. Although if you wanted to, you could probably count Peter, Paul, and Mary's version of Leaving on a Jet Plane, and that came out in November 1969. It was number 1. Okay, so that's 3. So then how do we get 11 greatest hits so far? Why did this album come out now? Let's put this question aside for the moment, but let's call it why, all right? We'll get to that. Okay, songs on this greatest hits album. Again, they're listed here. That's not the order they're on the album. From the Rhymes and Reasons album, Leaving on a Jet Plane and Rhymes and Reasons. From Take Me to Tomorrow, Follow Me. From Poems, Prayers, and Promises, Take Me Home Country Roads, Sunshine on My Shoulders, and Poems, Prayers, and Promises. From Airy, Starwood and Aspen, and The Eagle and the Hawk. From Rocky Mountain High, For Baby for Bobby, Goodbye Again, and of course, Rocky Mountain High. Sorry, no cuts from Whose Garden Was This? Or from Farewell Andromeda. But, let's look inside. Ooh, this is the first time the liner has been used to a good effect in John Denver albums. Before, the paper liner was either ads for other albums by the company or completely blank. So here they're using it as well they should. Got the songs and the music credits on one side with John's introduction, and then a nice photo of him on the back. Okay, again, the songs listed on the cover are not the way they are on the album. But here is John's introduction to the album as it's printed here. When RCA first approached me with the idea of doing this album, it was my intention that it be more than a collection of tracks from my first 6 albums. I felt that some of these songs had grown a bit, that I am singing better than I was 4 or 5 years ago, and that I would like to treat some of the songs a little differently than I had in the original recordings. Here is a collection of Now and Then. The songs are those most often requested in my concerts. The only exception is Rhymes and Reasons, which no one ever asks for, but I think it includes the best lyrics I've ever written. I might add that these are most of my favorites. I hope you enjoy what we have done, and I thank you for listening. Peace. John Denver. Okay, so that means he went back and re-recorded some of them. So, which of the 11 selections are taken directly from the old albums? And which ones are new recordings to this one? Boy, wouldn't that be a fun assignment for a snowy afternoon, huh? Listen to all of the recordings, compare and contrast each song to its different iteration. Yeah, measure the evolution of John's songs as we are kind of doing here. So go ahead, have at it, but you know, you don't have to take the time to do this because, of course, I already did. As John mentioned in this note, it was the older songs that needed to be updated. So I think 5 of them out of the 11 have been recast. Now, I am not YouTuber Rick Beato. I don't have a production studio. I don't have the original recordings that I can nail down all the little nuances, okay? But to my own ears, I think there are 5 that have been recast for this album. So, Leaving on a Jet Plane, the melody line of the chorus is slightly different and the pacing is a bit slower. In Rhymes and Reasons, the piano accompaniment is gone and the guitar is more pronounced. In Follow Me, the echoey voices and the choruses are gone. Some strings have been added in the background, as they had for a number of these songs. Background vocal is a little more subtle than before, and the song itself, this is Follow Me still, is a little bit slower. Poems, Prayers, and Promises sounds pretty close to the original, although somehow it's 30 seconds longer. I don't know how that happened. Starwood and Aspen has a slightly different instrumentation arrangement. Now, For Baby for Bobby already had changed from the way he did it with the Mitchell Trio to the way it is on the Rocky Mountain High album, so that one already changed. But the rest seem to be the same. So again, I think 5 of the 11 songs were re-recorded and remixed. This is my amateur take on the production. I don't have any inside scoops, and Rick Beato could probably pinpoint it better than I can. Okay, so we considered the songs. Now, what about the cover photos here? Iconic is not a strong enough word for these photos. Signature is not a strong enough word for these photos. These 2 photos began showing up everywhere. They began to be what we would call now his brand being established with these photos. These pictures were everywhere. I looked through my old scrapbooks. I found at least one article that used this picture as the opener on it. But they began showing up everywhere, and I have, again, from my archive, get this, folks, this t-shirt used to be light blue. I'm gonna look at this. It's from back then. It has been in the bottom of a dresser drawer since 1979. It's gotten tanned by the wood. It almost looks like a tie-dyed t-shirt now. This is just a decal on a t-shirt, but that's what they did back then. They didn't have sophisticated ways of doing it. It was everywhere. These pictures were everywhere, okay? So I think it's fair to say that these images still represent what a lot of people think of John Denver when they think of him at all, okay? Again, they established his brand, being out in nature and just his look and the hat and the glasses, everything, okay? That's another reason why this album is important. Now, we put aside the question, but let's go back to why. Why did Greatest Hits album come out in November of 1973? Okay, it's the big why. But in Western Massachusetts, the big Y means something else because the big Y, the letter Y, is the name of a grocery store chain. And the reason for that is because the flagship store was at an intersection that was a Y. But I digress. That's Western Massachusetts. Anyway, the big why here is, why did this album come out now? And the answer boils down to what else was happening in November of 1973, and the answer boils down to a single word: sunshine. On Friday night, November 9th, 1973, the made-for-TV movie Sunshine aired on national television. It was a sentimental story based on real life about a young woman named Kate. She was a young mother. She learned that she had a rare form of cancer and that she was dying. So she recorded an audio journal on tape for her young daughter to have and to listen to after she was gone. Her husband, Sam, was a musician, and he wrote and sang songs to her in the movie. It was a very powerful presentation. Maybe it doesn't sound like it now, but at the time, it logged in as the most watched made-for-TV movie in history. Keep in mind that these were the days of the movies Love Story and Brian's Song, and both of them featured tragic young deaths. Both of those movies generated huge audiences and revenues. I did not watch Sunshine on that Friday night in 1973. It wasn't on in our house. But obviously, plenty of people did, and plenty of people talked about it afterward, and that part I do remember. If you look on the International Movie Database today, you will find reviews written by everyday people of Sunshine, where they say that the movie had a lasting impact on them and that they still think about it today, even though they only saw it once back in 1973, okay? This is a tough movie to find on DVD, if you can find it at all. I did not try very hard to track a copy down, I can tell you that. But I did track down a copy of the vinyl soundtrack. Now, this is a very optional purchase for a John Denver fan. Very optional purchase, because even though John's songs are on it, it's not his voice singing them. It's Cliff DeYoung, who played Sam, singing them, okay? So what happens on this album are songs that Sam sings, Cliff DeYoung, and then interspersed are audio recordings by the woman who plays Kate, Christina Rains. And so it basically kind of recreates the movie. It's a movie soundtrack, of course. And so the songs of John's that are on here are Sunshine on My Shoulders, the main song, Daydreams, Take Me Home Country Roads, My Sweet Lady, Goodbye Again, and Winter from Season Suite on the Rocky Mountain High album. Again, the movie, in the movie and on the soundtrack, Cliff DeYoung sings the songs, not John. But popularity of the movie led to the popularity of the song, Sunshine on My Shoulders. And so that song hit the charts in February of 1974. It spent 13 weeks on there, was number one for at least a week. So this was John's third or fourth top 40 hit, depending on how you count. I spent some time talking about Sunshine on My Shoulders when I addressed the Poems, Prayers, and Promises album in the last video. Link above, link below, because that's where it first appeared. And I talked about how the album cut was 5 minutes and 10 seconds long, which was far too long for radio, so they made a shorter version, which, you know, you might still hear today. I also mentioned about in Sunshine on My Shoulders how it's easy to remember the words of the verses because they're in alphabetical order. Day, song, tale, wish. And I also proposed that there might be an additional hierarchy in that progression too. On and on and on. So you can see those points in part 2 of this series. So, successful movie, ramped up the demand for the soundtrack, ramped up the demand for the original Sunshine on My Shoulders. Wasn't it convenient then that we had a brand new album that had that song on it? Coincidence? I don't think so. Now again, I don't have any inside scoops on this, okay? But record company executives thinking here, okay? They may not have anticipated just how much attention the movie and the song would get. Maybe they took a risk and it ended up being a true marketing success. I don't know any of the dealings between RCA and television producers, but looking at it now from the distance of time, the connection seems pretty obvious. Back then, when I was a junior in high school, I didn't know about marketing strategies. I could care less about them. What this album did for me is make me want to go back and get all the original albums where these songs originally were. So again, good marketing strategy on the part of RCA. It's all about the dollars. It's all about the dollars. By the way, speaking of 1973, if you go online and look, you will find that the Mattel Toy Company actually even produced a series of Sunshine Family dolls modeled in the tradition of Barbie and Ken, okay? The set had a mother and a father and a daughter. Look them up online. You can find sets still available on eBay. Maybe you even owned a set of Sunshine Family dolls. I did not, but maybe you did. They were capitalizing on the phenomenon. Now, the dolls had different names than the characters in the movie, but still, the Sunshine Family, you know, it was pretty obvious. Why not reach down and get kids excited about this movie too, even if they don't care? Now, I don't know if in the doll family the mother was supposed to die at a young age or not. I can't imagine that they would go that far, but maybe you had a set. Go look them up. In any event, Greatest Hits album was one of the first albums by anybody to sell 10 million copies around the world. It's John's most successful album still. These versions of the songs became the standards of the day for radio airplay, except, of course, for Sunshine on My Shoulders, which had that shorter version. And these photos still live on, not only on the album covers, but also in the mainstream and in our cultural imagination. And this, my friends, was what was happening in John's music in the year 1973. We still have a lot of ground to cover in this series, as you know. Coming up next in early 1974. RCA was still reaping the bounty from the Sunshine connection. At the same time, though, another record company was looking at this situation and his growing popularity and said, hold on there, fellas. We can jump on this bandwagon too. And that's exactly what they did. That's coming up next in the next episode. So, thanks for watching, everybody. As you can tell, I am still an avid John Denver fan. So feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications for when our next episode will air. What do you remember about these songs? What do you remember about these times? Did you watch Sunshine? If so, I'd love to hear from you. Leave your comments below. Did you watch Sunshine? Did it make you cry? That's a song reference that we will cover in the next episode. Anyway, Thanks again for joining me on this journey, and it will continue. My name's Corinne Smith. Now, see you next time, and go listen to some good music.